Welcome back to our study of 1 Samuel.
Just to try to clarify some things on the thing with the woman with a familiar spirit. Actually, if you look in the Hebrew, where the King James Version calls it a familiar spirit, if you look at it in the Hebrew, it's actually a necromancer. And a necromancer, necro means corpse, and mancer is prophecy. So it's a person that is giving an inspired word from a corpse. Okay, so we're talking about communicating with the dead, okay, which is what was going on here, which was forbidden by God. You kill those people. Now, another thing, we mentioned this, is that Satan still had the authority of death and hell, you understand? And so the spirit is communicating with spirit. Okay? So this spirit is familiar with the spirit of Samuel. You follow me? And so the spirit can tell Saul things. And a lot of this, when you see all these signs out where it's a familiar spirit, spiritual advisor, they've got all kinds of palm readers and all these different type things. All this is, if they're telling you things that you see some things come to pass, it's demonic spirits doing that. Okay, and you stay away from that stuff. I can't imagine a Christian going into a spiritist or a palm reader or a witch or whatever. You understand? Can they tell you things that are true? Yes. In the book of Acts, you see the damsel, as it's called, that's following Paul and Silas there in Philippi, saying, these men are men of the Most High God who have come to show us the way to salvation. That is a true statement. But what does Paul do? He casts the devil out of her. You don't need the devil talking for God. You understand? And you'd better know the difference. You say, well, that's true. So what's wrong with that? I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's the devil. That's what's wrong with it. And this is what's duping people. You know, there's a truth involved in it. You can't just really dupe everybody in by just blatantly lying to them, unless you're the news. And you don't dupe everybody in, but you dupe a lot of men, okay? Because people will see through the lies. But what happens if you tell them the truth? And then you distort things just a little bit. Or you tell them the truth to lure them in, and then once you get them in, then you start putting some error in, and some error in, and some error in, and you lead them away from God. You understand, that's Paul and Silas were beaten and put in jail because they cast the devil out of that woman, because that woman was making her owners money. And there's a lot of that going on today. People are making money off of stuff and calling it God or calling it right or whatever. Stay away from it.
Very good.
God will speak to you by His Word and by His Spirit. And I believe in gifts of the Spirit. But I believe it needs to be gifts of the Holy Spirit. You understand?
Chapter 29. We had read verse 1 there, where the Philistines had gathered their armies, and the Israelites had gathered theirs. And the lords of the Philistines passed on by hundreds and by thousands, but David and his men passed on in the rearward with Achish.
So remember that David, there's at this particular time, he lives at Ziklag, his men and their families, and he's become very close friends with Achish, who is a Philistine. Okay, David's living in a Philistine area. And Achish is saying he's making David his bodyguard. He trusts him so much. And so when the Philistines come against Israel, Achish says, all right, David, you can go with us. David said, all right, I'm in. I'm going to show you what we can do. Okay? And so when they passed by these different armies, you understand these are various Philistine cities. When they come by, the captains of these armies, they see David and his men coming up in the rear with King Achish. And they're not happy about it.
Yeah. Achish was the king of Gath, right? I think you can see that in chapter 27. Then said the princes of the Philistines, what do these Hebrews here? And Achish said unto the princes of the Philistines, is not this David, the servant of Saul, the king of Israel, which hath been with me these days or these years? And I have found no fault in him since he fell unto me unto this day.
Straightforward.
Okay. And the princes of the Philistines were wroth with him, and the princes of the Philistines said unto him, make this fellow return, that he may go again to his place which thou hast appointed him, and let him not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he be an adversary to us. For wherewith should he reconcile himself unto his master? Should it not be with the heads of these men?
So these captains of the armies, they see David and his men, and they ask Achish, what is he doing here? And Achish defended David's presence, but the captains of the Philistines were angry, and they demanded that David and his men return home. No, they're not going into battle with us. And so they refused to allow David and his men to remain with them while they engaged in battle with the Israelites, because they were afraid that in the battle, David and his men would turn against the Philistines and fight for the Israelites, and that David would do this to get reconciled back to Saul.
Is not this David of whom they sang one to another in dances, saying, Saul slew his thousands and David his 10,000s?
Now, so they reminded King Achish, this is that David that they exalted, and these women were they saying Saul slain his 1,000, David his 10,000. No, he's not going with us. That's the essence of it, okay?
Then Achish called David and said unto him, surely as the Lord liveth, thou hast been upright, and thy going out and thy coming in with me, and the host is good in my sight. For I have not found evil in thee since the day of thy coming unto me unto this day. Nevertheless, the Lord's favour thee not. Wherefore now return, and go in peace, that thou displease not the lords of the Philistines.
So Achish calls David and tells him the decision made by the captain of the Philistines, and he assured David, look, I don't have a problem with you, but you're going to have to leave. You and your men are going to have to leave because these captains are very upset the fact that you're here. So it's not what I want, it's what they want, so you need to leave.
And David said unto Achish, but what have I done? And what hast thou found in thy servant so long as I have been with thee unto this day, that I may not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?
So David questions Achish about the decision, asking, what have I done that would prevent me from fighting with you?
And Achish answered and said to David, I know that thou art good in my sight, as an angel of God. Notwithstanding, the princes of the Philistines have said, He shall not go up with us to the battle.
Now, if you think about this, David has really got the favor
Yeah.
of this Philistine king. And I mean, he says, you're like an angel of God, but I don't have any fault in you, but the captains of the army, they've forbidden me to allow you to stay, so you're going to have to go.
Wherefore now rise up early in the morning with thy master's servants that are come with thee, and as soon as ye be up early in the morning and have light, depart.
So Achish tells David, all right, in the morning you get up early and you and your men leave as soon as it's light. In other words, you're leaving at the dawn of day, okay?
So David and his men rose up early to depart in the morning to return into the land of the Philistines. And the Philistines went up to Jezreel.
So David followed the instructions of Achish, and he and his men left early the next day. Then they returned to the land of the Philistines, but the Philistines went to Jezreel. Remember, that's where Israel is now, right? They set up their encampment at Gilboa, but they're actually by a fountain at Jezreel at that particular time, and the Philistines go to engage them in a battle.
Chapter 30. And it came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites.
Thank
you. I couldn't get it. Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and had smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire, and had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away, and went on their way. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives.
So note the third day. This is how far away they were, okay, travel. So the third day, they come back to Ziklag, and when they get there, they see the city's been burned, and all the inhabitants have been taken captive by the Amalekites. Now, you think about this. I mean, all of David's wives, all these other men, their wives, their children, everything. They've taken not only just people, but they've taken the spoil as well. So they've lost everything. They've lost their families. They've lost what wealth they had. And so, obviously, they're very upset.
Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep.
They cried till they couldn't cry anymore.
Mm-hmm. And David's two wives were taken captives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal, the Carmelite.
So David's at a great loss too, both of his wives.
And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God.
David was very distressed, obviously, because of the grief and the suggestion by some of his men, stoning. It's his fault. If we hadn't gone with those Philistines, we'd have been here and this wouldn't have happened, that type of thing. It says David, the King James Version says, encouraged himself in the Lord, which he strengthened himself. He's been very discouraged. They're weak in heart. You understand? They're grieving. And so what does David do? This is a spiritual principle right here. He goes to the Lord. He gets before the Lord, and he encourages himself in the Lord. When the people that he's leading are talking about killing him, he goes to the Lord for his direction to get his strength, okay?
Think about, so often people's tendency is to go to other people. and to seek strength and encouragement from other people. But if you remember how we talked before class that the Lord is in us, why not go to the one that's with us all the time, right? The one who leads us and protects us and take care of us. If you underline in your Bible, I would underline that verse, especially that last part. David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. Verse 7, and David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee, bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought thither the ephod to David.
Now note this, David encourages or strengthens himself in the Lord. What does he do? He calls for the priest, the high priest. Mm-hmm. All right, bring the ephod. I'm going to inquire of the Lord. I'm going to find out from God what I should do. And so Abiathar returns with the ephod, and then David asks God, should I pursue this troop? Mm-hmm. Will I overtake them? See, he's getting his counsel from God, and the Lord answers him. The Lord tells David, pursue the troop.
Right.
And he assured David, you'll recover everything that's been taken. Now, you convey that message to the people that's going to want to kill you. Mm. Okay?
Yeah. So David went, he and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those that were left behind stayed.
You think about this. This is a mark of a leader right here. No, when David can regroup these men and get their mind off killing him to recovering what they've lost. It gets their attention focused. That's a good leader, okay? Mm-hmm. And so they take off. They go after the enemy. David he had 600 soldiers, okay? And when they get to the brook Besor, there's 200 of them that are just fatigued. Mm-hmm. Now think about this. It took them 3 days to get back to Ziklag, right? They get back to Ziklag and everything's gone. And then they turn around and they're headed back to pursue this enemy, to engage them in battle. And 200 of them are just too tired to go on any further. Mm-hmm. So David left them to stay with the stuff. Okay? In other words, you guard this. We'll leave you in charge of what we're not taking into battle, okay?
Verse 11, and they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights.
So as they continued on in the pursuit, they find an Egyptian that they bring to David, and they fed him. Evidently, he was pretty well famished, okay? They gave him something to drink. It says when his strength returned, okay? Then he was able to communicate with them. So it sounds to me like he was in pretty bad shape when they found him. And we'll get a little bit more insight into that as we go along.
Verse 13, and David said unto him, to whom belongest thou, and whence art thou? And he said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me because 3 days along I fell sick.
Here we go. So David said, to whom do you belong? And he said, well, I'm a servant or a slave to an Amalekite, and 3 days ago I got sick. Mm-hmm. Listen to this master. He just left me here. He didn't need me. I'm sick. I'm a liability to him. You understand? So go ahead and read
Yes,
verse
sir.
14.
We made an invasion upon the south of the Kerethites, and upon the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire.
So, you understand this slave is having to do what his master's telling him to do. So he's been personally involved in what this army's been doing. We made a raid, basically. We invaded the southern area, the Kerethites, and the territory of Judah. And we invaded the territory that belonged to descendants of Caleb. And we burnt Ziklag. So he was a part of that too, okay?
And David said to him, Canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, Swear unto me by God, that thou wilt neither kill me, nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company.
He evidently didn't have a very good master, you understand.
Yeah.
And so David asked the servant, can you lead me to where this troop is? And he says, I can. Promise you won't kill me, or you won't turn me back over to my master.
Mm-hmm. And when he had brought him down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah.
So evidently David promised the guy, that, take us down and we won't harm you. And so he leads them to where the Amalekites are, and they're spread out and having a ball, you understand? They're celebrating their victories, eating, drinking, dancing. You know what that means? Their guard's down.
Yeah.
They're all caught up in partying, not understanding that they're vulnerable to the enemy.
And David smote them from the twilight even unto the evening of the next day, and there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men, which rode upon camels and fled.
Evidently, this was a pretty large troop, you understand, and David and his men attacked them at twilight and fought with them until the evening of the next day, and 400 of the young men were able to escape by riding on camels. Otherwise, all the men were killed.
And David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives.
Now, think about this. The Amalekites had been in all these other areas and made these raids and all, and David recovers what these Amalekites had taken, plus he rescues his 2 wives. He's getting everything out of Ziklag, and if I'm reading this right, he's getting a lot more than that, okay?
And there was nothing lacking to them, neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil nor anything that they had taken to them. David recovered all.
What did God tell him?
Yeah.
Shall I pursue? Yes. Will I overtake? You will recover everything.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they did.
And David took all the flocks and the herds which they drave before those other cattle, and said, This is David's spoil.
Well, now, if you just read that on the surface, you think, well, who does he think he is? Mm-hmm. So all these flocks, all these herds, and all that this livestock that these Amalekites had, David said, all right, this is mine. This is my portion here. But you have to read the whole story.
Yeah. And David came to the 200 men which were so faint that they could not follow David, whom they had made also to abide at the brook Besor. And they went forth to meet David, and to meet the people that were with him. And when David came near to the people, he saluted them.
So after defeating the Amalekites and taking their spoil, David and his army returned back to the brook Besor, where they'd left these guys who were weak, 200 men. Okay.
Then answered all the wicked men and the men of Belial of those that went with David, and said, Because they went not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil that we have recovered, save to every man his wife and his children, that they may lead them away and depart.
Now look at this. Let's tell you a little bit about David's army.
Yeah.
Some of the wicked and worthless men who followed David, they didn't want to share the spoil with these 200 men who didn't go with them to the battle. And they said, just give them their wives and their children, and that's it.
Then said David, Ye shall not do so, my brethren, with that which the Lord hath given us, who hath preserved us and delivered the company that came against us into our hand. For who will hearken unto you in this matter? But as his part is that goeth down to the battle, so shall his part be that tarrieth by the stuff, and they shall part alike.
So this will tell you something about the character of David and his leadership ability. So David refused to listen to these guys. No, that's not the way it's going to be. You understand? This is what's going to happen. Those who stayed by the stuff are going to get their portion, just like those who went into the battle. We're going to share this spoil. We're going to share it alike. You follow me? Okay. Here again, a mark of a leader. You'll see a lot of leadership abilities in David with the way he is in control of those men, to where he stands up against them when they're wanting to do wrong. He leads them to do right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. And it was so from that day forward that he made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel unto this day.
So after he becomes king, I mean, he made it, he set that standard there, but he made that a statute and an ordinance for all Israel. And you know, if you haven't been in the military, there's what's called support, and then you have what's commonly called front line. And so you have the front line out that's engaging the enemy somewhat face to face, okay? But then you have the people behind the lines, so to speak, that are keeping the supplies, everything they need to fight, to them. It takes the support as much as it takes the other. One can't function without the other. It'll be short-lived, you understand. And so that's the rationale behind this thing, is everybody in the army is important. Those who are engaged in battle and those who are supplying the whatever's needed, ammunition, anything else, whatever the others are needing, food and all this, they are just as important. And so when the battle's won, everybody's going to get their portion. We're going to share it alike.
Good. And when David came to Ziklag, he sent out of the spoil unto the elders of Judah, even to his friend, saying, Behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. To them which were in Bethel, and to them which were in the south Ramoth, and to them which were in Jattir, and to them which were in Aroer, and to them which were in Siphmoth, and to them which were in Eshtemoa, and to them which were in Rachel, and to them which were in the cities of Thank you. And to them which were in the cities of the Kenites, and to them which were in Hormah, and to them which were in Chorashan, and to them which were in Atac, and to them which were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men were wont to haunt.
Okay, now you see why David said, this is my spoil. Not for himself personally. Here's the man of integrity. All right, all these places that we've utilized, places that we have been running and hiding and setting up, all these years, then we're going to pay them back. The people that have been good to us, were going to be good to them. And so he divides these flocks and these herds up, and he gives them away. He gives them to these various cities that have been a refuge, if you will, for them. You understand? Take care of the ones who take care of you.
That's good. I like that. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa.
So here you see that the Philistines are fighting Israel and killing many Israeli soldiers on Mount Gilboa. Remember, that's where Israel had set up their camp at Gilboa, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's so bad that these Israeli soldiers run.
And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Melchi-Shua, Saul's sons.
So the Philistines are pursuing. They don't understand at the time who these people are. Okay, we'll see that later. But they pursue Saul and his sons. See, Saul and his sons they're out there fighting. And so it tells you they killed Jonathan, who was in covenant with David. Okay. And they also killed Abinadab and Melchi-Shua. 3 of his sons and Saul are wiped out. So what that familiar spirit told Saul came to pass.
Yeah.
Then Israel was defeated. He and his sons were killed in battle.
And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was sore wounded of the archers. Then Saul said unto his armor-bearer, Draw thy sword, and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through, and abuse me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell upon it.
So the archers hit Saul. In other words, he has an arrow that's pierced him, okay, and severely wounding him. And so he says to his armor-bearer, Draw your sword out and kill me. I don't want these uncircumcised, I don't want these out-of-covenant Philistines abusing me. Okay? And but his armor-bearer was afraid, and he refused to carry out Saul's request.
And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he fell likewise upon his sword and died with him.
So Saul took his own sword and fell on his own sword in an attempt to commit suicide. Now, it says that when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, that his armor-bearer also fell on his sword and killed himself. Now, this is important to look at this because when we get into 2 Samuel, we're going to see some conflicting stories. Okay? So, did Saul actually die when he fell on his sword? Well, it appears that his armor-bearer at least thought he was dead. So he killed himself. Okay? Just keep that in mind when we get into 2 Samuel, okay?
So Saul died, and his 3 sons and his armor-bearer, and all his men that same day together.
So the Philistines defeated the Israelites and killed many people, some key people. And, go ahead.
And when the men of Israel that were on the other side of the valley, and they that were on the other side Jordan, saw that the men of Israel fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them.
So when the men of Israel who was on the other side of Jordan, they saw what was going on, that Israel had been defeated, and Saul obviously was dead. They saw what occurred. They fled from their cities. They abandoned their cities and ran for their lives. And so the Philistines ended up going in and occupying their cities.
And it came to pass on the morrow, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen in Mount Gilboa. And they cut off his head and stripped off his armor, and sent into the land of the Philistines round about to publish it in the house of their idols and among the people.
So the next day, when they come out to gather the spoil of the people they killed, that's just a thing that was done in war, still is, that they found Saul and his 3 sons. So they cut off Saul's head and took his armor, and then they announced the defeat and the death of Saul to all throughout the land of the Philistines in their idol temples and to the people. In other words, they're gloating in the fact we've killed the king of Israel and his sons. Now we're going to have to stop there. Our time's up, so we'll come back to this. Hold you in suspense, Sarah.
Father, I thank you that you bless us indeed. You enlarge our territory. Your hand's with us to keep us from evil so that we do not cause pain. And I thank you for blessing us and keeping us and for making your face to shine upon us and being gracious unto us. You lift up your countenance upon us and you give us peace. So, Lord, we're glad to invite you to rise up. Let your enemies be scattered and let those who hate you flee before you. Amen. Amen.